What happens when a family secretly plots to evict their own mother, believing she's powerless? Evelyn uncovers their scheme and reveals she's always owned everything. What happened next left her family stunned. 4 years, Evelyn Wallace had been the quiet force behind her family's comfort, a woman whose careful hands built a home that became the heart of every holiday, every triumph, every whispered crisis. The old colonial on Hawthorne Lane was filled with evidence of her life's work: framed school portraits, chipped teacups from Sunday gatherings, a garden that burst into riotous color each spring. Yet, as the years wore on and her hair silvered, the respect that once greeted her presence slowly faded. It started small. Her daughter, Miriam, began arriving early for Sunday dinner, briskly rearranging furniture and dropping hints about updating the place. Evelyn tried to smile, swallowing her discomfort as family traditions fell away, her cherished tablecloths replaced with disposable runners, her blue willow china boxed in favor of modern plates. Then her son, Greg, offered to help with the finances, quietly taking over the utility bills and urging her to just let the bank do automatic payments. Evelyn, grateful for any offer of help, reluctantly agreed. Months passed. The walls felt less like her fortress, more like a museum curated by strangers. Even the conversations changed, Miriam's tone now tinged with condescension, Greg's visits briefer, filled with talk of market value and downsizing. The grandchildren seemed distracted, eyes fixed on screens. Evelyn listened to their laughter, a hollow echo of the joy that once filled her home. Then came the family meeting. Miriam sent a group text. "Let's talk about your future, Mom. We just want what's best for you." Evelyn's stomach twisted as she prepared her lemon bars, the very ones Miriam used to beg for as a child. That Saturday, they all gathered in her living room, Miriam, Greg, their spouses, the grandchildren in tow. Miriam wasted no time, launching into a speech about Evelyn's safety and well-being. Greg chimed in, "The house is too big for you now, Mom. We think it's time you considered assisted living. You'd love the activities." Evelyn listened in silence, every word a nail hammering away at her confidence. They spoke as if she were already halfway gone, as if her voice and memories were simply obstacles to a smoother transition. Greg produced glossy brochures, smiling seniors at shuffleboard tables, gleaming dining halls. Miriam outlined a plan. "We've already talked to a real estate agent. If we act fast, we can get a great price." Her husband, Thomas, added, "And of course, we'll take care of all the details, Mom. You don't have to worry about a thing." No one asked what Evelyn wanted. She looked around the room, at her own children, who now regarded her as a problem to solve, not a person to honor. Something hardened within her. She asked for a moment alone, retreating to her bedroom under the pretense of feeling overwhelmed. Behind her closed door, Evelyn's mind raced. She opened her old sewing basket, reaching beneath a false bottom. There, tucked away for decades, was a folder of meticulously saved documents: the deed to the house, investment statements, insurance policies, each page proof of her quiet power. In her careful script were notes on every loan she'd ever made to Greg, every gift to Miriam, every dollar she'd spent restoring the home after her husband's death. Tears threatened, but Evelyn wiped them away. 4 years, she'd trusted her family, assuming their love would protect her. Now she saw the truth. She'd protected them, but she'd also protected herself. She had the means to defend everything she'd built. Downstairs, the family laughed and planned, confident she would bend to their will. But as Evelyn stared at the names and numbers, a new resolve settled over her. They may have plotted to bury her, but they had forgotten the one detail that would undo them all: she owned everything. And she was just getting started. Evelyn emerged from her room with her head high, the folder hidden beneath a shawl draped across her arms. In the living room, her family had broken into factions. Miriam and her husband hunched over a laptop, browsing listings for local senior homes, Greg on the phone, whispering with someone about liquidating assets, the grandchildren bored, half-heartedly scrolling through their devices. For a moment, Evelyn hovered at the doorway, invisible in her own home. She stepped into the kitchen to pour herself tea. From the dining room, their voices floated in, confident, dismissive, as if she had already consented to leave. "Once the paperwork is in order, it'll move quickly," Miriam said. "We just have to get her to sign those transfer documents. She won't even notice." Evelyn's hand trembled as she set her teacup down. She moved to the hallway, listening as Thomas, Miriam's husband, rattled off projected selling prices and commission rates. Greg rejoined the group, his voice louder. She doesn't even use half the house. And she can't keep up with the bills. It's for her own good. Evelyn's blood simmered. She realized this wasn't a gentle nudge toward a new chapter, it was a full-scale coup, planned behind her back. Her family had underestimated her for so long they didn't even bother to whisper their schemes. She retreated to the study, her old sanctuary, and set the folder on the desk. Her hands steadied as she reviewed the documents. Every account, utility, mortgage, property tax, remained in her name. She had never transferred ownership, never added a second signer. Not even Greg, despite his help. Her investments, carefully maintained, sat untouched by anyone but her. She had records of every automatic payment, every repair bill, every dollar spent since her husband passed. Evelyn dug deeper, finding the insurance policy she'd updated the year before, listing herself as sole beneficiary and owner of the property. She located correspondence with the bank, confirming she alone could authorize any sale or refinance. There were letters from her lawyer, Mr. Adams, congratulating her on maintaining full control over your assets. In a moment of sharp clarity, she realized, they had nothing but talk. But she needed more than paperwork. She needed to know how far they'd gone. That evening, Evelyn quietly searched the house for evidence of their plot. She found a folder on Greg's laptop labeled Hawthorne Sale. Inside, drafted emails to realtors, scanned copies of forged power of attorney forms, and a spreadsheet calculating her anticipated needs at a senior residence. There were even emails between Greg and Miriam discussing how to convince Mom she's too frail to manage on her own. Her heart pounded, both with rage and a grim sense of vindication. She took photos of every incriminating document, forwarding them to her own email. She made backup copies on a flash drive she hid in her jewelry box. After midnight, Evelyn called Mr. Adams, her lawyer, leaving a message marked urgent. Her voice was calm, but her words crisp. I have reason to believe my family is attempting to defraud me of my home and assets. I have evidence and need your guidance. She spent the rest of the night at her desk, organizing files and making notes. She didn't sleep. Instead, she wrote out her own account of the day's events, every slight, every whispered conversation, every plan made in her absence. By sunrise, her fear had faded, replaced by steely determination. She made breakfast, served coffee as if nothing had changed, and listened as her children joked about new beginnings. They had no idea what was coming. Evelyn was finished being dismissed, finished being invisible. She was ready for war, a war fought not with shouting or accusations, but with cold, irrefutable proof. The family who tried to bury her alive had forgotten the one thing that truly mattered. Evelyn was the architect of everything around them, and now she was prepared to reclaim her throne. Evelyn moved through Sunday as if nothing were amiss, quietly watching her family carry out their plan right under her nose. She noticed every loaded glance between Miriam and Greg, every time her daughter's phone lit up with a new message from the realtor, and how her son carefully avoided any direct eye contact. They seemed so certain of her frailty, so sure she would simply sign whatever paper they slid in front of her. The charade continued into lunch, where Miriam smiled too brightly as she handed Evelyn a pen and a manila envelope. We just need you to look over these forms, Mom. It's just paperwork to make things easier if there's an emergency. Thomas hovered behind her, nodding with encouragement, the mask of concern poorly hiding his impatience. Evelyn took the envelope with trembling hands, hands that steadied as she caught Miriam's anxious glance at Greg. She opened the packet, skimming through legalese disguised as medical directives and emergency contact forms. Buried within, she found a general power of attorney and a transfer of title form, both with highlighted signature lines. She looked up, her eyes calm and unblinking. I'll need my lawyer to review these, she said quietly. Greg's smile faltered. It's just routine, Mom. You know lawyers just complicate things. Evelyn stood, her back straight, voice firm. That's exactly why I want his advice. The rest of the day, her family retreated, casting furtive glances her way as they whispered in the hallway. Evelyn retreated to her study, sending scanned copies of the documents to Mr. Adams. The reply came quickly. Do not sign anything. These documents strip you of your rights and transfer your assets. I'll come first thing tomorrow. That evening, as Miriam sulked and Greg paced restlessly, Evelyn made a quiet dinner, her famous beef stew, a meal meant to remind everyone whose hands had always fed them. She said nothing of what she'd found, moving through the kitchen with calm precision. The grandchildren, sensing the tension, ate in silence. After dinner, Evelyn sat in her favorite armchair by the window. She called her neighbor, Mrs. Franklin, who served as treasurer for the neighborhood association and knew everyone's business. Casually, Evelyn asked about the for sale signs cropping up nearby, inquiring if anyone had heard about her house being on the market. Mrs. Franklin was quick to reassure her. No such rumor had reached her yet, but she promised to let Evelyn know if she heard anything. "You'd be surprised how fast word gets around here, dear." Evelyn felt reassured. Her family hadn't moved openly yet. But she suspected they soon would. That night, Greg knocked on her door. "We're just trying to help, Mom," he insisted, almost pleading. "We want what's best for you." Evelyn met his eyes. "You want what's best for you. I can see the difference." He bristled, muttering something under his breath before leaving her in peace. Evelyn spent the night double-checking every hiding place, flash drive secure, originals locked in the safe, digital files uploaded to the cloud. She began drafting a letter of her own, addressed to her children, a statement of intent, a declaration that she was not relinquishing her rights, and a reminder of everything she'd sacrificed for them. Morning came with the ring of her lawyer's car pulling into the driveway. Mr. Adams was brisk and professional, his respect for Evelyn obvious as he reviewed her documentation. "You have more than enough to shut this down," he assured her. "If they try to sell, you can stop them. If they try to use these documents, you can prove fraud. And if you want, you can confront them with the law on your side." For the first time in days, Evelyn allowed herself a small smile. She had never wanted a war, but she refused to surrender. By noon, she had a plan, a team, and an unbreakable case. Her family still plotted in whispers and shadows, blind to the fortress she'd quietly built. They saw her as frail and fading, already halfway to the past. But the only person being buried was the old version of Evelyn, the one who'd stayed silent for too long. Now, she was ready to rise. By Monday afternoon, the house felt like a battlefield veiled in polite conversation. Miriam hovered in the kitchen, her movements sharp and clipped as she watched Evelyn through narrowed eyes. Greg made nervous trips in and out, checking his phone constantly, his patience wearing thin. The grandchildren avoided the adults, cloistered in the upstairs den with their video games and headphones. Evelyn watched all of it with a quiet vigilance, knowing that the time for silence was nearly over. Mr. Adams returned in the early afternoon with a slim briefcase and a stack of printed documents. He and Evelyn sat together in the sunlit study, poring over every deed, bank statement, and insurance policy. Evelyn described every interaction and every word her family had spoken over the past days, her memory sharp and clear despite her age. "They think you're isolated," Adams said, shaking his head. "They've counted on you being passive. But with this evidence, you can stop them from selling the house, from moving your money, from enacting any part of their plan. If they push, we'll take it to court, and you'll win." Evelyn nodded, her resolve hardening. She signed several key documents to freeze her accounts, instructed the bank to require her signature for any withdrawals or changes, and filed a formal letter with her insurance company reaffirming her sole ownership of the property. Each step was a small victory, layers of protection against the storm gathering inside her own family. That evening, Miriam announced another family meeting at dinner. The table was set with uneasy formality, and Thomas cleared his throat as he pulled out a folder. "Mom, we need you to be reasonable. We all want what's best for you. These papers will help us take care of everything. Finances, the house, even your health decisions. Just sign them and you'll have nothing to worry about." Evelyn looked at the faces around the table. Her children, once the center of her world, now strangers wielding legal jargon like swords. She kept her expression neutral. "I've already spoken with my lawyer," she replied softly. "I won't be signing anything." Greg's composure cracked. "Mom, you're making this harder than it needs to be. You're not thinking clearly." Evelyn's eyes flashed. "I'm thinking more clearly than anyone here." An awkward silence settled over the room. Thomas began to object, but Mr. Adams' voice cut through the tension. "Mrs. Wallace will not be signing away her rights. Any further attempts to pressure her, forge her signature, or move her assets without her consent will be met with immediate legal action. Miriam stood, face flushed with anger. "You're ruining everything. We're just trying to help." "No," Evelyn said, her voice firm and unwavering. "You're trying to take what isn't yours. And I won't allow it." The meeting dissolved in a storm of angry mutters and slammed doors. Evelyn remained at the table, her breath finally coming easy for the first time in days. She was frightened, but she was not alone, not anymore. Her lawyer, her documents, and her own determination stood with her. Late that night, she wrote in her journal, recording every word and look from dinner. She added new passwords to her digital files, sent copies of the documents to her trusted neighbor Mrs. Franklin, and checked that her flash drive was still hidden away. The next day would bring more confrontation. She knew her family would not give up easily. But she was no longer the woman they believed her to be, no longer timid, no longer uncertain. The storm had arrived, and Evelyn stood at the center, unbroken and unafraid. The day after the explosive family meeting, the tension in the house was palpable. Greg barely spoke to anyone, stomping around with an air of sullen resentment. Miriam alternated between icy silence and bursts of frantic energy, making phone calls, firing off emails, and complaining loudly to Thomas about ungrateful mothers who don't know what's best for themselves. Even the grandchildren seemed to sense that something monumental was unfolding, tiptoeing around Evelyn with hesitant smiles. Evelyn, meanwhile, found a strange sense of calm. Every step she took now had the weight of intention. She spent her morning reviewing her accounts online, verifying the new restrictions and security measures with the bank. She called Mr. Adams to confirm the freeze on any transfer of property or large withdrawals. "They won't get a penny, Evelyn," he reassured her. "If they try anything else, let me know immediately." That afternoon, Miriam attempted one last act of persuasion, cornering Evelyn in the sunroom. "You're hurting everyone by dragging this out, Mom. If you cared about your family, you'd just sign." Her voice trembled, frustration barely concealed behind a mask of concern. Evelyn regarded her daughter with a steady gaze. "If you cared about me, you wouldn't be plotting behind my back," she replied. "This house is my legacy, not a windfall for anyone who wants an easier life. I'm not going anywhere." Miriam's anger boiled over. "Fine. But don't expect us to keep helping you when things fall apart," she spat, storming out and slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. Greg, desperate, tried a softer approach. He found Evelyn in the garden, kneeling by her roses, the afternoon sun glinting on her silver hair. "Mom, we just thought you'd be happier, safer, with less to worry about. You're not young anymore." Evelyn looked up, dirt on her gloves, defiance in her eyes. "Maybe not. But I've built this life, this home. I'm not handing it over to people who only see me as a problem to solve. If you really loved me, you'd stand by my side, not push me out." He stared at her, caught between guilt and resentment, then turned and walked away. That evening, Thomas quietly approached Evelyn with a different plea. "Look, Evelyn," he said, his voice softer, "I never meant for things to go so far. I was just trying to support Miriam. Maybe we should step back and figure out what you want." Evelyn almost smiled. "It's too late for easy fixes, Thomas. But thank you for being honest." The next day, Miriam and Greg left early, claiming they needed space to cool off. The house, for the first time in weeks, was quiet. Evelyn brewed tea and sat in her favorite armchair, sunlight warming her shoulders. The silence felt like peace, not loneliness. She called Mrs. Franklin, her neighbor, and invited her over. Together, they went through the evidence Evelyn had collected, ensuring that every copy was safe with someone she trusted. Mrs. Franklin promised to watch the house and let Evelyn know if any unfamiliar faces showed up. In the evening, Mr. Adams called with news. He'd filed an official notice with the county, flagging any attempts at sale or transfer. "You've weathered the worst, Evelyn," he told her. "They might try again, but now everyone in town knows what they're up to. You're protected. And you're not alone." As the day faded into night, Evelyn felt something she hadn't felt in years: hope. The storm had battered her, but she was still standing, still in control. She closed her eyes, picturing the faces of her children as they realized just how wrong they'd been. They had tried to bury her, But they had underestimated the strength of the roots she'd planted in every stone, every memory, every page of every document. The fight wasn't quite finished, but Evelyn knew now, with absolute certainty, that she could never be erased. The next week brought a strange quiet, broken only by the occasional ring of the phone or the distant murmur of television. Greg and Miriam kept their distance, stung by the backlash from neighbors and mutual friends who had quietly learned of their scheme. Mrs. Franklin, true to her word, became Evelyn's guardian angel, checking in every morning, helping with errands, and ensuring the community knew who truly owned the house on Hawthorne Lane. Evelyn found herself returning to long-neglected joys. She invited her bridge group over for tea, filling the house with laughter and the scent of lemon biscuits. She worked in her garden from dawn until dusk, restoring color to beds that had suffered from months of neglect. She even dug out her old sketchbooks, spending lazy afternoons sketching the very rooms her family had once tried to claim as their own. Mr. Adams visited again, bringing with him official documents, the deed in her name, a certified statement of her bank accounts, and a letter from the county clerk affirming her sole ownership of the property. He explained, "There's no legal avenue left for them. Any further attempt to seize your assets would be fraud, and they'd risk losing everything, not just your trust." Evelyn carefully filed each document in her safe, then wrote her own will, leaving explicit instructions for her estate. "No one will ever have to fight this battle again," she told Adams. "If they want forgiveness, they'll have to earn it." The absence of her children was heavy, but not unbearable. The grandchildren called her, tentative at first, then with growing affection. "Will you still teach me how to bake cookies?" one of them asked over the phone. Evelyn smiled. "Any time you want, sweetheart. My door is always open for you." As spring sunlight spilled through her windows, Evelyn's house once again became a haven, not just for herself but for everyone who entered with kindness. She found support in old friends, new neighbors, and community groups who admired her courage. She spoke quietly to other women at the community center, sharing her story so they might guard their own futures more fiercely. And then, one Sunday afternoon, Miriam and Greg appeared at her door. Their faces were pale and uncertain, their pride replaced by something much softer, remorse. Evelyn let them in, setting tea on the table without a word. For a while, they simply sat together, the silence thick with everything that had gone unsaid for weeks. At last, Miriam spoke. "We're sorry, Mom. We let our own fears and greed get in the way. We forgot who built this house, and who made us who we are." Greg nodded, his voice hoarse. "You didn't deserve any of it. If you'll have us, we'd like to try again. No more schemes. No more lies." Evelyn studied their faces, searching for sincerity. She found it in the way Greg's hand shook, in the tears trembling in Miriam's eyes. "I'll always be your mother," she said. "But from now on, I set the terms. And my trust won't be so easily given." They nodded, accepting her boundaries. The reconciliation was not perfect, but it was real, a fragile peace, hard-won and honest. That night, Evelyn sat by her bedroom window, the folder of documents locked away and her home filled with quiet strength. She was no longer the woman her family could dismiss or control. She had reclaimed her throne, and with it, the respect and safety she'd always deserved. Spring unfolded in full glory on Hawthorne Lane. Evelyn moved through her house like a queen restored to her rightful throne, every corner echoing not with defeat but with resilience. The kitchen was once again a hub of life, Margaret from next door dropping in for coffee, her bridge friends planning their next game, the grandchildren visiting for baking lessons and stories of the old days. The garden, bursting with color, was a living testament to all Evelyn had fought to protect. With her legal victory complete, the community rallied around her. The neighbors who had once quietly watched from afar now greeted her with respect. At the grocery store, women her age asked for advice about their own homes and estates, and Evelyn found herself gently guiding others to protect what was rightfully theirs. She even started volunteering at a local women's shelter, helping other seniors understand their rights, her story spreading quietly as inspiration and warning. Inside, the house felt warmer, lighter. Her documents, deeds, bank statements, her newly written will, remained locked away, but the true security was in the knowledge she'd built a life no one could erase. She walked each room with new confidence, her steps measured and assured. Miriam and Greg visited often now, never with entitlement but always with humility and a desire to help. They respected Evelyn's boundaries, listening to her stories, inviting her to family events, and slowly earning back her trust. The grandchildren came to her for wisdom, hugs, and comfort, as if sensing the shift in the family's balance. The wounds from betrayal hadn't vanished, but each act of kindness, each honest apology, began to knit the family back together. One evening, as Evelyn and Mrs. Franklin sat in the garden, sipping tea under the lanterns, her neighbor remarked, "They tried to bury you, Evelyn. But they forgot how deep your roots go." Evelyn smiled, feeling the truth of it settle in her bones. "Roots," she replied softly, "are what keep you standing when storms come." That summer, she hosted a family reunion, one filled with new traditions and old joys, where forgiveness was offered, but never confusion about who truly owned the home. Laughter filled the house again, the sound sweeter for all it had survived. As twilight settled over her garden, Evelyn realized her greatest victory wasn't in the papers locked in her safe or the documents bearing her name. It was in having built something no betrayal could destroy, a life, a home, and a family, all her own. Her family had tried to bury her alive, but she had bloomed back stronger, because, in the end, she owned everything that truly mattered.